and welcome to episode 49 of the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and this is the show with video game news, reviews, and hot takes that nobody asked for. We have a packed show for you yet again. We have Netflix buying Warner Brothers. How is that going to work out? We're going to talk about it. Yacht Club, could they survive past Mina? They are skeptical. We're going to get into that too. We have a good story from our friend Embracer, our longtime friend of the show, Embracer, selling off some more studios. Just a quick mention on that. And then, of course, AI. Prices are going through the roof. We actually have several stories about that. And so I kind of made like an AI segment out of the news as well. And in impressions, we have Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip. The alliteration is strong with that one. And Mortal Kombat 1, the newest entry in the Mortal Kombat series. Played through that one as well. But before we get into that, I have some things I'd like to ask you to do. For one, I'd love it if you could give us a rating, a review, anything, just a comment. I'll take it, anything. Even if it's just you saying, he's AI, I will take that. That's fine. You can be a part of the show, too, by emailing us in. Honestly, you can comment anywhere. This is just the old script I have, but you can email the Plug and Play Podcast at pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com, and you can be a part of the show. I will read off your questions. We have the comment corner now. It's a new favorite addition of mine to the show. Really enjoying it. And then, of course, you can check the timestamps in the description. It's a labor of love I do for you. If you don't like what I'm saying, you can skip to something you want to hear me say, or, vice versa, one or the other. And then, of course, the socials. Everybody's got to plug their socials. We got a Twitter or an X, whatever you prefer, a TikTok, an Instagram, and a YouTube, all under the name Plug in Play Pod 1. Go give us a follow, give us a like, see what's going on there. We have lots of fun on the socials. But happy holidays. A little brief interstitial before we get into the comment corner. But happy holidays, everybody. I know I'm kind of just missing you after Thanksgiving and getting right in before Christmas. It's a busy time for us all. Hoping you found some good Black Friday deals. I know it's an unfortunately timed show, I feel, because this show is going to go up like 2 or 3 days before the Game Awards. So that's going to be the big news. Really, the holidays, everybody's slowing down. There's not a lot of news. Nobody's got a lot going on for obvious reasons. We're all busy with family and caring and love. I get it. But it makes news really freaking slow. And news is my favorite segment of the show, for sure. So, it's really unfortunate. But fortunately, we have the good Netflix news that popped up today. That was a very big story. Literally just happened, and I'm kind of rolling with my impressions on it. So that'll be fresh. But very much looking forward to the Game Awards. That's going to be the big thing. It sucks that it's going to be 2 weeks down the road. Unfortunately, I'm going to post the episode, and then 2 weeks later, I'm going to have an episode up about it. So it just is what it is. It's the curse of doing a bi-monthly show. But we survive. We move on. But I hope you have a good holiday season. I'll see you in 2 weeks, so that'll be before Christmas. So we'll see you then, and hopefully you'll have a nice, lovely Christmas break. If I don't, for some odd reason, we'll see. But moving on. Let's get to the comment corner. All right. I love a good comment corner because I love a good conversation. I've always said this is why I'm doing this. I want to talk about video games, and I'm very fortunate that my shorts do occasionally get some good comments from people, or some comments. I don't know. It really depends on what you consider good. But some comments is honestly, I'm very pleased with it. I'm very pleased. So last episode we had a segment about the Steam Machine. It was a lot about the Game Awards and the Steam Machine. Those were kind of our two big topics last episode. And this particular one, we're still having shorts go up as I'm recording for the Game Awards. Those aren't not too much discourse surrounding those. But the Steam Machine, I had a little bit of a negative take on it. Okay, I'm not saying negative, but I was like, this is not going to be for me. I don't see any real appeal here. Um, we'll get into why because the comments kind of segue me into it. But we had multiple comments from people about the Steam machine, and I would love to go into those, shed some light on these fantastic interactions we've had. So, on our YouTube shorts, we have the finest dash Raven who says, crazy take, bro. I mean, the controller and probably the headset will be a flop, but if you look at any news or anything on social media, every single console gamer wants to lean into PC gaming. Um, this is even more interesting. I just love internet discourse, okay? It's always so interesting. I don't know what I've never commented online, so like I don't understand the draw of having like an argument just with some random dude on the internet, about video games. Like I've never understood it. But Sausage Jockey Gaming responds to Finest Raven, not agreeing with him and not agreeing with me, but having a completely separate take. He says, quote, probably the headset will be a flop. The Valve Index was a success, and the new Valve frame is going to be by far one of the best standalone VR gaming headsets on the market. It's primed for success. Quote, the controller is also one of the most technically advanced controllers ever built. If priced reasonably, it will dominate the PC controller market. Very interesting take. So he basically says, F you for saying anything that Valve announced would be bad, and then tries to kind of substitute that with, or not substitute, but substantiate that with his own, like, hey, everything Valve has ever done is really good, and all the stuff that they showed is going to be amazing. Okay, so let's break this down. So we'll start with Finest Raven. So he thinks controller and headset are not going to be doing very well. I am in the camp that I agree with that. I don't see people really arguing for a better VR headset or clamoring, I guess, for a better VR headset. I don't see them arguing for a better controller. I think everybody's pretty satisfied with the Xbox controller. Like that has clearly dominated and like really cemented itself as the PC console control player, it's their controller of choice, clearly. Like it dominates. If you've ever looked at any statistics and really just anything in general about like controller setups, it's always Microsoft, it's always Xbox. Those guys did a great job getting, for some reason, a corner on the controller market within PC. He says everybody on social media says that's a console gamer wants to lean into PC gaming. They all do. Every single one of them. Don't you know? And this is always the fun thing is it always comes down to, and this is I think for both Sausage Jockey and Finest Raven. I think both of these two have very interestingly hit the nail on the head for a very fun social dynamic, which is everyone sees their own narrative. Like their narrative is being played off of what they see around them, and what they see around them is dictated by an algorithm that typically is going to show them things that they either completely disagree with or very much agree with. So here we have basically these two saying, "Hey, look, bro, you're completely wrong because everybody I know thinks this. Look, the VR headset for the first VR headset for Valve was a smashing success. Okay, like duh. Look, the PC controller, the new PC controller for Valve, that's obviously going to be a big success because it's the best controller ever. Everyone's so hyped about it. Like I think we're all kind of hitting on the same thing, which is like what is everybody around me thinking? And I don't know if that necessarily reflects a reality. I think you're kind of silly to say that PC gaming is a majority of gamers. I think you're insane to say that. Like just straight up, if you're saying, like so many console gamers want to transition to PC, I think console gamers that want a more hardcore experience want to transition to PC. I think that eventually we are definitely going to get there where console experiences are basically just PC experiences, right? But like right now that's clearly not the case. I think a hardcore demographic, which is probably the people who are finding my videos, they're leaning hardcore, are all kind of clamoring for that if they're not already on PC. But like again, kind of goes back to my initial comment when I first talked about this. If they really want to lean into PC gaming, just get a PC. Like if you are a console gamer and you're like, "Dang, I really love the PC gaming scene. I really want to be part of it. F this whole console shebang. I don't care about it. Just get a PC." And you could say, "Oh, and like another comment I had, which I think I'll just go ahead and read it. This is from Hyperion UV6NQ. I'm sure there's a reasoning behind that sequence of letters and numbers, but I don't understand it. Um, this take is insane. LOL. The market to play Steam games in your living room for someone who can't afford slash don't want to get into a whole desktop is absolutely massive. So here's where it all breaks down. Is sure if this device is priced appropriately. I think if this device is, $200, I will be getting a Steam machine. Like I don't care. Like that's a cool device for me to play my Steam games on my TV for a reasonable price. I think that's fair. If you are a console gamer and you have ample amount of money to invest in another device, you're just going to get a PC. Don't get the mid-range jump to just play it on your TV. And, like you can still hook up a PC to your TV. Like I have hooked up a laptop using an HDMI cable to my TV, and it has worked. It has done fine. You can play your games like that. You can watch your movies like that. You can do anything you want as long as you have an HDMI cable and a that can reach your device, like that's fine, right? So this Steam machine being a what seems to be every source is saying a very pricey device, I don't know who it appeals to. Like if it's very pricey, I think you are better suited to just invest in a real PC rig. Just get a real desktop or a laptop, gaming laptop, and you will be getting a similar experience and you will not be restricted to your TV and you will possibly have more functionality and more eased functionality or more freedom, not eased functionality. It'll be much easier to use a Steam machine because it's streamlined, but much more broad freedom with the functionality that you have with your PC or your gaming laptop or whatever than you would with a Steam machine. I I just don't understand everybody who's saying, look, well, a console gamer that wants to jump ship and go into the PC market, they should use a Steam machine. I'm like, I don't know. I think you should just, because this thing is going to be priced so high, I think you should just look into getting a PC. If you genuinely are like, I freaking hate console gaming, I really love the idea of PC gaming, I love the freedom, I love the games over there, I really just want that experience, just get a PC. And it's weird to see this being such a divisive topic. It really does feel like people are just saying, well, I like this, and everyone I know likes this, and therefore it should that is the way it is. And I'm like, I don't think that it is a very broad market for console gamers that want to switch to PC, and I don't think it would be appropriate at this price range. That's really like my two takes. Is like I think I'm a great audience for the Steam machine. I really don't PC game very much. I really play most of my PC games on a Steam Deck. And like I'm much more like of a fan of a console experience. And so like I would love a Steam machine. That really does sound like a great device for me. But even I am looking at this, I'm like, look, if I'm spending 700, 800, $1,000, we don't know the price of it yet. Analysts are saying it's somewhere between $700 and $1,000 if they had to take a guess. I don't know why I wouldn't just be like $1,000. I think I'll just buy a PC, and then I'll have a legitimate gaming rig with specs that I can upgrade easily and functionality that is much more wide and diverse. I just don't get it. Okay. I just don't get it. Um, I think it is just people seeing what they want to see. I think a lot of people are not really including the price tag at this point because it's not there. I think once the price tag officially drops for this thing, I think the discourse may change a little bit. But like again, given the components that are in it, given the price tag on it, it's not for me. It's not for me, and I think a lot of people are going to say it's not for me either. It's just very interesting to see that conversation. But that's going to be our comment corner for this episode. I appreciate everybody that commented. It's always a fun time. I finally put a to try and I didn't think it all the way through. Okay, I put an in slate at the end of my shorts on all the social media platforms to basically try to encourage traffic to the full podcast because a lot of people were watching the shorts, but they clearly weren't watching the full podcast because, why would you? It's just presented in front of you. I don't even know if people thought it was a full podcast, or I think a lot of people did, but like it is what it is. But anyways, I wanted to try and drive more people to actually watch the show because that's where my full thoughts are. It's not just diced up and you get half the thought and all that good stuff. And hopefully, it's a little bit more personal. You get more of a interpersonal connection with me and a conversational aspect when listening to the show. But I said, hey, come check out the show. But I said at the very beginning, I said, wait, before you comment that I'm AI, you should check out the full episode. And that's obviously a joke because my comment section is just filled with people saying I'm AI, which of course I am AI in those videos, or at least the visuals are. So it made sense. It makes sense to comment that, but it's just like I feel like it's focusing on the wrong thing, I guess, is kind of how I would say it. I would appreciate if you focused on the things I'm saying, not the AI generated face. But hey, we're gonna get into AI later in the show, which I think is a great topic. But anyway, basically the comment section just exploded with way more people commenting that I'm AI, which is like fine. Like it is what it is. Doesn't hurt my feelings, but like everybody is now commenting. Like the engagement has shot up on my posts because I've told them not to comment that I'm AI, and so they're just commenting that I'm AI because I said not to. Because that's how the internet works, and I should have thought that. But hey, from a social media perspective, I'm getting more engagement, and therefore it's good. So honestly, they're helping me with the algorithm every time they comment, so I'm pretty okay with that. Anyway, on to the news. My favorite segment, which was pretty barren. I was literally I considered scrapping the news. I considered scrapping the news this episode until this morning when Netflix buys Warner Brothers whole for 800. Let's start that over for the soundbite for the short. Netflix buys Warner Brothers for 8. Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm just going to have to delete this from the episode. Netflix buys Warner Brothers for $82.7 billion. There we go. Nailed it. Third tries the charm. So this is a big deal. It's a big deal, right? So this is pretty earth-shattering, I'd say, for a couple of different reasons and also none, right? So the only reason this is a part of the show is because Netflix and Warner Brothers both consider themselves players in the video game industry at large. I say consider because I don't think anybody considers Netflix to be a serious contender, even though they own game development studios and have an entire arm of their company that's dedicated to video games. I don't think anyone actually thinks about them when they think video games at all. Warner Brothers, on the other hand, has several smash hit franchises, including the Harry Potter Legacy game that came out 2 years ago, and Mortal Kombat, the Batman Arkham games, so on and so forth. So they have a lot of really big titles, but they've been really underperforming lately, and it's been a major problem for them. So $82.7 billion is a big number. They're going to get a little bit of a bump from it. So this comes with obviously all of their movie studios, HBO, and that's, it's very funny because Netflix's stock price actually dropped prior to the buy, because even investors were like, really, why do you need to buy all of Warner Brothers? Like, that just doesn't seem like within your like goal as Netflix. Like, you don't need to do that because you really just need more content for your service, and you don't need like people who make it necessarily. You don't need to buy out all of their studios and all of their streaming service and all that other stuff. You really just need the IP. So it really seems like you're overbuying when you could have just bought this piecemeal, and that was something that Warner Brothers was offering, was to kind of be broken up into different pieces and spread out. But Netflix wanted to buy the whole shebang. So in terms of our podcast, look, it only matters because Warner Brothers is a very big game publisher, and Netflix wants to move into the gaming industry. And I see both of these two people as people who really don't have a great idea what they're doing with their video game arm. They're much more comfortable with their streaming services, or more specifically, their content, film wise, show wise, whatever you want to say. That's where these guys are obviously like good at what they do, not video games. Video games are not that great. And so it would be interesting if like Microsoft, I mean, not that we're saying Microsoft is very good at video games, at least recently, but like a Microsoft bought them, and that would kind of make sense, or at least their video game development, bought them for the video games. It wouldn't make sense for Microsoft to buy the studios, but if EA bought them, let's say EA bought Warner Brothers or something like that, I can see that being like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Specifically the video game division, obviously, but I can see that making sense because EA runs a good video game company. Like, they've always been in the black. Like, they're very profitable. They know how to make video games well and produce them well. Netflix has never really done that. They've bought several studios, and it's never really come to much. Not only that, but Netflix only really focuses on iOS games, like small mobile titles. And Warner Brothers is known for AAA massive studios, which I should include. I haven't read off the studios yet, but if you're unfamiliar with Warner Brothers, so they own Rocksteady, which are obviously the people who make Arkham Asylum games, the Batman Arkham Asylum games, and then obviously Suicide Squad recently. NetherRealm, which you would know from Mortal Kombat and Injustice, Avalanche, and Traveler's Tales, who you know from Lego, all the Lego games. Traveler's Tales makes those. All of them, I mean, Rocksteady obviously has been an absolute bomb recently. I think NetherRealm has been doing fine. I'll talk about that a little bit when I talk about Mortal Kombat 1. But like, I think they're probably doing fine. And then Traveler Tales, I feel like those Lego games knock it out of the park. Like, I feel like they are probably not very hard to make, or not very expensive to make, and a lot of people buy those suckers. So like, it can't be that bad off. Like, they have to be in the black. But anyway, they bought all of them, and what I essentially assume this means for Netflix is what I would assume the goal of Netflix gaming division was a very, very long time ago, which is to basically become another Game Pass. So currently Netflix only has like iOS offerings. If you go into your Netflix app, you will often see, and it used to be very hard to find. Now it's very prominent for me, and maybe it's because I've downloaded games from Netflix before. But you will see like a mobile games kind of category where you can go and select a game, and it'll take you to the store, and you can download the Netflix version of, like, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto 3 or something like that. I know that was on Netflix service for a while. So you can kind of go on there, grab a bunch of mobile games, and play them on your phone. I'm not a big mobile gamer, so I've actually downloaded a few mobile games from Netflix, but never actually played them. But that's always what they've been doing. They've acquired a few studios, and they've always been like more narrative focused. So like, kind of like what Bandersnatch was doing. In fact, fun fact, Dispatch, the superhero game that's making rounds right now, used to be a Netflix game. It was going to be a Netflix show that was going to be like choice based in a game, and it ended up like they ended up pretty much scrapping it and letting them loose, and they just ended up finishing it later. So Netflix was kind of experimenting with that for a while. They kind of did that with a couple of like Telltale games, old Telltale games, like the Minecraft Telltale game. They made into like a Netflix show, and they didn't actually like change it or anything. They just basically made you were able to play it via your TV remote. Was essentially how that worked. But they are mostly focusing on those kinds of games, smaller mobile games, mobile experiences, and like a more narrative focused push, which I haven't seen them do much with in a very long time. So it always just kind of seems like they're very lightly tapping on the video game scene. They're like, oh, we'll see what's going on. Maybe this is a good idea. I don't know, that kind of deal. But this is now they own these massive AAA studios. And what I've always assumed Netflix would be is eventually they're going to be an app on your TV where you can basically just stream games to your TV with an internet connection that's good enough, just like Xbox. Xbox can already kind of do that. So I would assume that's what Netflix was going to do, but they don't have any studios that would really fit the bill for like wanting to stream games to your TV. You could really play most of their games since they're smaller games on your phone. So like it makes sense. Like why would you really invest in that technology when most of your games don't require it or really are enhanced by it? It makes sense. But now that they have Mortal Kombat, Batman, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, like all of those big titles, that's not stuff that's as easily transferred to your phone. So it seems like this is a play. Obviously, the main point of the purchase was to get the studios, to reduce competition. HBO is no longer going to be a thing, kind of deal. Like that was obviously the main focal point, but it does synergize, the gaming division does synergize with what Netflix is trying to do. So it makes sense, but it's just like they will now have to really, in order to utilize these studios at all, unless they are planning on gutting them and turning them into something completely different, like a mobile studio, which would suck because that's not the games I want to play. They're going to have to move forward with this kind of Game Pass idea. And again, I think that is where they should go. I think that's the obvious idea, what they were thinking as a long-term vision for this. Just the technology's not there yet for most people. So I think that's where this is going. Now, it's expected to close in 2026, quarter three, so late 2026. So Warner Brothers, there's a reason they're selling themselves. So like they merged with Discovery 2 years ago or 3 years ago now, but 2 years later they wanted to break up from Discovery, and so now they're in the process of breaking up. So they're going to make that a new publicly traded company, and basically Netflix isn't going to have anything to do with that. They don't want Discovery, which makes total sense. It really doesn't benefit them as much as something like a Warner Brothers would. So they're not buying them, and so Netflix and Warner Brothers will officially merge in Q3 of 2026. And this obviously still has regulatory approval to get through, but the Trump administration is typically pretty lax with these mergers, so I wouldn't expect any issue here. The major issue I've read about, again, this happened literally this morning. I know I'm dating the episode, but happened literally this morning. But Paramount / Skydance is really fighting this. They said that the deal was unfair and really leveraged towards Netflix. So not cool. It's looking like that may be a potential hostile takeover situation. They may be trying to stop the deal and then try to make their way in on it. Obviously, the owner of Paramount, Skydance, specifically Skydance, is the son of the owner of Oracle, and they are obviously very close with the Trump administration. So it's possible that they could get into the ear of the Trump administration and try to stop the deal. I don't know if that's any possibility, any likely possibility. That would be a long time from now, but it's something worth noting, and I thought very interesting. Just the tangled web we weave of capitalism. Fun stuff. But that's the big shakeup in the gaming industry now is two people who really don't seem to know what they're doing with their gaming empires are combining them, which is just so fun, isn't it? Next up, Yacht Club Games says Mina the Hollower is a make or break game for the studio. So this one caught my eye, and I just honestly, it's it's two parts. It's eye opening, and I also think comical. So if you didn't know, Yacht Club Games is the same developer that made Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight was a very popular retro throwback game. It's a fun game. A lot of people said it was too easy. I thought it was fine. I'm not as attached to that level of nostalgia for that era of games, so like I wasn't as into it as a lot of people were. But it's still a fun game, and it was very, very well loved and sold 3 million copies from what I have read. This was from VGC. 3 million copies. So, a very, very well selling game for an indie, especially at the time. They have admittedly done very little since then. So, if you didn't know, Yacht Club Games has pretty much been making Shovel Knight DLC for the past like 7 years, 8 years, because that was part of their Kickstarter goal. They kickstarted that game, and they had a bunch of expansions as part of the Kickstarter goals, and it just took them forever to make them. But Mina has kind of been in that minor period after it was their next project, obviously, after they did that. They were also working on a 3D Shovel Knight game, which I actually kind of would have been kind of interested to see. I'm much more of a 3D like old school gamer, so I would have really liked to have seen that. That has apparently been put on the back burner right now, but they did very well for themselves. But I think that they have clearly been burning through capital. They have not been making their money back on these DLCs as much as they did on the original Hollow Knight, even though the original Hollow Knight probably made a lot of money for the studio. It is still like a long time since they've really put out anything big that they can recoup anything on. So here was the quote from the CEO of Yacht Club Games. He said, quote, "If we sold 500,000 copies, then we would be golden. If we sold 200,000 copies, that would be really, really great. If we sold like 100,000, that's not so good." So if you didn't already kind of raise your eyebrows to that, you may be saying, oh, they just have to sell 200,000 copies of Mina the Hollower, a game that people are already looking forward to from a studio that people already seem to really like because they have one of the best-selling indie games in the past decade or so. Now, I don't know if that's truly not the case anymore, but at the time was one of the most popular indie games out there that sold 3 million units and was very well received. They have to sell a lot less, like a lot less, in order to just be really, really great. I think it's funny that they think that this number can't be hit. I think 500,000 copies is, I think, I'm not saying it's a guarantee for Mina the Hollower, because it's not out yet. I don't know. Maybe that game sucks. But I think that's really likely. Like, I think that is really, really likely. And that apparently is golden standard. It's just very interesting to kind of see a mind behind these developers and like what copies do we need to really make this a good investment, and also like how skeptical they are that, I don't know, something to me seems so obvious is like still a skeptical like mystery to them that they may not even make it out on the other end. But that's just owning businesses, baby. It can be stressful. I mean, it's all the pressure's on you. If this doesn't happen, games are hard to make. Games take a long time to make, and if you can't make your money back, you're freaking not looking so hot. So at the end of the interview, and I don't see as many people reporting on this, he implied that they would still be around even if the game bombed and sold 100,000 or less copies. And essentially what he implied was, we will just go out and like sell the company to somebody else and continue making games, or like get outside investment. So like essentially implying right now we're fully funded indie and like fully self-funded, and we would just go and find a publisher or something, and they would give us the money to make another game. And I don't think it would be hard. I think Mina the Hollower looks pretty good. Played the demo, it was pretty solid. So like, I don't think that game's gonna suck. Like, I think it's gonna be pretty good. So like, I don't know. Like it's interesting that this got blown up, but I think it's mainly because people are like, what the frick are you talking about? Like, of course it's gonna sell well. Like, that's silly goose. But I again, I think that the numbers game is very interesting. Um, this is a short one. It's a short one, but this is Embracer. The Embracer segment. It's just been so long. This used to be so Embracer. We'll just get into it. Embracer sells the Neverwinter developer Cryptic Studios and Arc Games, which is from the people who made Remnant from the Ashes, to Project Golden Arc. So that's kind of a mid-tier publisher. They published Neverwinter and they published Remnant. They also published stuff like Star Trek Online, which Cryptic also made, and Hyperlight Breaker and Torchlight 2. But so they're kind of a mid-tier developer, and they're already very deep in the weeds with these two developers anyway. So it just kind of makes sense. But they sold them for $30 million. So Cryptic Studios and Neverwinter were two of the studios that were kind of bought in their massive spending spree that Embracer went on a couple of years back, and obviously neither one of them have really done anything crazy. Remnant 2 obviously came out. I think it was well received for the most part. I actually have a friend who plays Neverwinter, or at least tangentially plays Neverwinter. I don't know how popular it is, but it is there, and I guess MMOs are still making money, so good for them. But 30 million is a far cry, I guarantee. I don't have the number, but I guarantee a far cry from what they paid for these studios. So this is clearly a fire sale move. We haven't seen Embracer make one of those moves in a long time, but I guess they had a buyer for these two, and they were like, heck yeah, just get rid of them, brother. I don't want them no more. But the reason I talk about this, it is actually a big deal. All right, two fairly well-known developers being sold off is a pretty big deal. But this is a very nostalgic story for me, even though it just happened recently. Because when we first started the podcast, Alexis, Cam, and I, this would probably be like every week. There would be some new big story surrounding Embracer until they absolutely collapsed, which is what it is. It was pretty understood that was going to happen at some point. It was a house of cards with a freaking gigantic anvil stacked on the very top. So it was just going to come down. They were way overspending, and they were buying up studios that did not make sense. It was crazy. But anyways, 30 million is, I guarantee you, they were overpaying for all of the studios way back in the day, and that's why they were buying so many. But probably way less than what they bought both of those two for. So way down in the dumps. But we would talk about it all the time. We literally had a show. One of our most watched shows, actually, one of the most listened shows, is the Embracer show, because it just became like an inside joke, almost not an inside joke, but a pretty open joke that like, dang, we are not doing anything but talking about Embracer every week. Dang. So that's what we did. We made it the Embracer podcast. But anyway, it's just a fun thing for me to look back on and say, oh yeah, that company sucks. Isn't that crazy? That is just crazy. But anyway, like I said, it was just going to be a short little thing. Kind of rambled on it a little bit. Didn't have that as well thought out as I wanted to. I really just wanted to regale on the times of old. But anyway, moving on. This is kind of was going to be our top story of the episode until Netflix bought Warner Brothers. But this is a tricky one for me because I am not the hardware guy, okay? I am much more of a software end guy, much more of a business guy. Both of those things make way more sense to me than hardware. I'm just not around hardware very much. I don't need to interact with hardware very much, so I don't know it as well. I tried to basically spruce up on that recently. I bought a new laptop. My old one was several years old, so I needed a new one. And in the process, you kind of have to understand what you're buying and if you're getting a good price for it. So I kind of brushed up on my hardware knowledge a little bit. I kind of know the new RTXs and all them acronyms that the kids love to talk about on their PC, PC rigs and all them. I kind of know that now, or at least I'm more familiar with it. But one thing that I did notice, and one thing I've heard a lot of people talk about, even people who aren't really into PC gaming, is RAM. RAM, ladies and gentlemen, being really expensive. Dang, isn't that crazy? Well, this is a couple of reasons. We're going to get into them. And most of them have two letters associated with them. That's A and I. So the first story that kind of came out while from the last episode to now is Xbox is reportedly looking at another price increase because of the RAM heises, of the RAM price increases from AI. So this is from Moore's Law is Dead. He's a YouTuber who actually breaks a good bit of hardware news. Right or wrong, he does break a lot of it, and it basically said Microsoft has not planned ahead. They did not have a stockpile of RAM for the consoles, and because of that, it means RAM is really hard to get right now because people are making runs on RAM for AI like stockpiles pretty much. Even Microsoft is doing that, I guarantee, because they are investing heavily into the AI infrastructure of their company. They won't be able to put them into consoles anymore, or they'll have to buy them at the significantly increased prices and then put them into the consoles. Well, what does that mean? It means that Xbox is probably going to have to raise the price because RAM right now, something that used to be $100 is now like $300. So like Xbox can't take that hit. Like consoles are already being sold to you at a discount so that you'll get they'll get the recurring revenue of every purchase that you make on the console, but they can't take another $200 hit on these consoles because one, nobody's freaking buying them, and two, that would then put them in the red on a console, which is not what they're, or it would put them even further into the red, even further into the red on a console, which is obviously not cool. They don't like that. So it would make it so that they have to then pass the price increase onto the consumer. So into the weeds on that, contract DRAM prices have reportedly increased by 170% year over year. This is, by the way, from VGC. Driven by a huge agreement signed by Samsung and SK in October. So, if you didn't know, Samsung and SK are two of the biggest DRAM or RAM providers in the industry. There's a third one we're going to bring up in just a second, but they will supply OpenAI with nearly half of the world's RAM output for its Stargate data centers. Yikes. Well, before we get into dissecting that, Micron has pulled out of the consumer chip market. Now, reading up on this, I read an NBC article on this. This was essentially, I don't know anything about Micron. Another big DRAM. They're kind of in the top three. So if SK and Samsung are the top two, Micron would be the top three, at least from what I understand. They have been kind of moving away from the consumer market for a while now, but them pulling out completely, and they were very open about this when they actually announced it. They said, look, the AI market has skyrocketed demand for corporate supply of these chips. We would be stupid to continue to make chips for consumers when we could sell to corporations which will pay a massive premium on them. It is way better for our business to move out of consumer completely, which is very interesting that their stock price apparently actually dropped 2% at the announcement of this, which in all honesty, if I was an investor, I would be putting in to Micron at that point because obviously a Microsoft or an OpenAI is going to pay more for RAM than I am because they have billions of dollars. I don't have millions of dollars or billions of dollars to spend on RAM. So like, yeah, you have more customers, but like they're not the high income they're not going to buy as much. So I get it. I understand why they did this. I would be investing in Micron at that point, not divesting. But the point is, we're being effed. Like, as gamers, we have really hit the we've gotten the raw end of the deal on this whole RAM situation. We are now going to start paying significantly increased prices. Consoles are going to have to go up, and this is all because of the AI bubble, as it were. So I use AI. Okay, I do. I've openly admitted it on the podcast many times. I have a Chat GPT account. I kind of use it as a Google substitute. Okay. I do use generative AI for videos for my YouTube. I have openly admitted that. So I am an AI advocate of sorts, okay? I see the value in AI. I also understand that AI has a lot of drawbacks to it, and I am somewhere in the middle on all of this, okay? I think because this is a huge topic on the internet in general, okay? But I think it is directly affecting the gaming sphere at this point because all of our prices are going to be through the roof because of RAM. But I think that AI is something that will be revolutionary. I think that there's an AI bubble. I think that is a complicated question with a not so straightforward answer. So is it a bubble right now? I think there's a likelihood it certainly is. Okay. Way too much money going into this thing. We don't know exactly how far we can go in a shorter period of time developing this technology. Who knows? It seems very bullish. I'd say a little too bullish in my estimation. Okay. So does that lead to a possibility of an AI bubble popping? Yes, absolutely. Do I think that it is a justified gamble that people are making? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that AI is going to be revolutionary if we can make it work. I think if we get to a point where we actually have legit AI and, like it is reliable. I mean, even human beings aren't 100% reliable. So, like, if we can get it to a point where it is on par reliable with a human or a even more so, I think we will surpass human reliability with, like intelligence and all that. I think it's very possible very soon, really. I don't know how doomsday I am on it. There's a lot of people out there who are like 2026, like it's over. Like the AI will take over and gas like everybody on the planet and kill us all. Like I've heard that, and that's actually a very popular AI like scientific study that is like, well, we assume that by 2027, I believe it's 2027, not 26, but 2027, AI will have probably taken over the world, and maybe 2030 we'll all be dead because it will have considered us, obsolete or in the way of its plans, and then if nothing is done to correct AI in any way, that could be a possibility. I think that I mean, it's certainly possible. I'm not in on the inside to see what's going on behind closed doors, but I mean, what I'm seeing in open doors, I see as like, well, if this continues at this trajectory, we have some issues as a species, absolutely. So I mean, I think a very common thing that most people may recognize, may have seen, is the Will Smith eating spaghetti meme. So way back in the day when AI was first kind of becoming popularized on the internet, a very viral clip of Will Smith trying to eat spaghetti was circulated pretty regularly, and it looked really horrific. Like it was comical. It was comical how bad this AI was trying to produce Will Smith eating spaghetti. I still think it's funny looking at it today. But if you look at comparatively what some of our better video in like our video output for AI is now doing, and you now look at what Will Smith looks like eating a spaghetti, I think that was 2 years ago. we have now gotten to a point where it is genuinely, you have to kind of squint to be like, hey, is that really Will Smith eating spaghetti? Like that's kind of crazy. I think within the next 2 years, you will 110% not be able to tell the difference between an AI generated video clip and reality. We will 100% be there in 2 years. If we jumped that far in 2 years from this looks comically bad to I genuinely have to try to figure out if this is real, I think you're in for a really rude awakening next election season when frickin' both candidates are frickin' making out with each other and doing all sorts of other stuff I'm not going to say on the podcast to avoid being demonetized. But like, I think you are 100% looking for something in the future that is really. I mean, I already literally know it's hard because I have AI videos that I put up, and people often comment, "Is this AI? Is this AI?" And I have an AI watermark in the bottom corner of the video that says, "This is AI." That's you cannot tell me that that is concerning. The general populace is already like, yo, I can't tell. And like to me, it's like, obviously this is AI. And to most people that are commenting, it's obviously AI. But there's already people who are on the internet and are super savvy about this stuff, and they don't know. I like to think it's easy for me to tell if something's AI, but even I am starting to get duped sometimes. Even I have to like watch something 2 or 3 times to be like, oh yeah, that guy has 6 fingers there. Oh yeah, there's a little bit of artifacting around his lips. Like that's kind of sad. That's kind of bad, right? So that being said, I went off on a tangent there. This is technology that clearly is advancing at a lightning pace and clearly can do things that if it can generate just a movie, if I can say generate me another Batman movie. I want to watch a Batman movie, make me another Batman movie, and it can basically do that within a few years. I think this technology can be used for so many other things. So many other things. It will clearly be able to code itself. It will clearly be able to like super boost our computing infrastructure, our code, everything. Like it will, and with that increased, obviously, it'll make everything better because our entire society is built on code at this point. We're a tech-driven society. Internet is key in our living from day to day. This will be a massive, massive boon for our infrastructure. It, however, will cause thousands and thousands of people to lose their jobs. It will consolidate wealth at the very top. Only the people who own those AI models that are enhancing everything are going to be the people who are going to be reaping all the profits, and it will make society even harder without some kind of infrastructure that's taxing those people who are controlling the wealth of those AI models, or universal basic income that gives income to people who cannot compete with AI models for work. Those AI models are pretty much just going to make the world a massive dystopia. At the same time, making our world way better, which is where I'm like, so I don't know what to think. Like, it really requires a significant government intervention for this to be a good story, for this to have a happy ending. And I think even with it having the happiest ending, we will still have a lot of hurt. It will still cause a lot of problems. And this is not even going into, the environmental impacts of AI and stuff like that, which like you can argue is certainly very bad, but like, you can also read that like it's not as bad as people say. It really is just however you want to spin it, because it is certainly using a lot of energy. It is certainly hurting the environment, but it's probably not doing it as much as like some other really, really harmful things to the environment. Again, I'm trying to take a measured approach to this because it is so divisive. I think I'm using AI, and I've said this on the podcast before, in a way that is pretty ethical. I'm not taking jobs from anybody. I'm just replacing my face in a video because I want to be anonymous. If you think VTubers are unethical, I guess I'm unethical too. But like, that's my way of using AI. So I don't think I'm AI slop per se. I'm just trying to give a different visual of my face using AI. But you could say I'm hurting the environment by doing that. I'm using a lot of processing power that shouldn't be used in order to create those clips, and it is what it is. The problem is that almost 1/10 of our entire population has a ChatGPT account, and they're using it actively regularly. There's 800 million people who have a ChatGPT account and are active users of ChatGPT, so they are also making queries on a regular basis that ChatGPT is using energy to, you know, to do, to give you an answer to. And you know, like if I'm bad, so are the 800 million people who use ChatGPT. And you can also argue that, like, yes, producing a video uses more electricity than producing a result from a query. I get that too. Okay, I'm not innocent here. But I think at some point we're all going to be using these tools. I think it's inevitable. I think we're already kind of moving in that direction because ChatGPT is so successful. I think Google has integrated it into its search features. And again, it's not always accurate, but it is way better than having to search my entire Google searches and make sure I can find the right answer. Most of the time, it is going to produce an answer that is at least somewhat relevant to what I want. Not always, but sometimes. So, here we are. Back to the circle here, okay? I've given you my stance on AI. I think it's a middle ground. I don't know how we're going to get out of this without it getting worse. Like, I really don't. Something is going to happen. Like, even if the bubble pops, even if you're like, I hate AI, I hope it dies. If the bubble pops, the economy will collapse. Not the entire economy, but we will go into a significant recession. Because right now, the only thing that is sustaining the economy is investment within AI. So if it pops, this is a problem for you and me. So, like, really, I don't think there's a winner and a loser to this argument. I think we are all really wrapped up in this. It really does look weird seeing so many circular investments with an open AI that if this ends up failing, I mean, it's going to be, 2008 all over again. It's going to be like, well, of course, these people are just retarded. These people are dumb. Why did they think this was going to work? This was clearly stupid. And it's like, well, we were so bullish on it, we thought it was going to be good. Bro, it's odd, right? But right now, as gamers, I know, that was a long non-gaming tangent. But as gamers, we are feeling the pinch with this, okay? But this does not just extend to the chips and the prices, which is where we get into another news topic. And this is where I kind of thought just addressing AI in general was good because we had multiple topics that were kind of circumferencing it, right? Probably wasn't the right word, but it is what I used. Tim Sweeney, which you may know as the Epic Games CEO, Fortnite, that one, says the game stores shouldn't mark games that used AI. So this is he's particularly pointing to Steam when he says this. Steam currently, if you ever go to a store page on Steam, you will be presented with like a sticker or a tag, and it'll say this game used AI. And it's really supposed to inform the audience. You're supposed to kind of garner, well, I don't like AI, I don't want to support AI, so I'm not going to support this game. And I do think that there's some middle ground on, whether AI is bad in games. Like Arc Raiders had a big controversy surrounding that very recently. It was, they used AI for the voices, the voice acting, but they paid the actors accordingly, and it was only for kind of filling in the gaps of like very miscellaneous stuff, like, hey, there's a bean on the counter, like that kind of deal. So, it to me, and again, like the voice actors were compensated for their voices being used in AI, and they knew that was going to happen. So like kind of okay in my opinion. It didn't put anybody out of a job, and that's kind of like my golden standard, my golden rule for if AI is bad. Like, did it put somebody out of a job? And if it didn't, we're good. Like honestly, should be okay overall. The only thing you can really argue is the environmental impact, and I think that like we're doing enough to f over the environment. If you're gonna point at AI, you should point at a million other different things. But not to justify it, but just saying. But really, what this mostly does is just it disincentivizes people to buy games that were made with using AI, which I think consumers should know about it for sure. But really, I don't think anybody's going to look at an AI tag and be like, they used AI. Wow, I love AI. I would love to support a game making AI, made using AI, which is, you know, obvious. So obviously Tim Sweeney is not very cool with this because his games are going to be using AI, and if they're using AI, people are going to be disincentivized to buy them. So he says this, quote, "The AI tag is relevant to art exhibits for authorship disclosure and to digital content licensing marketplaces where buyers need to understand the rights situation. It makes no sense for game stores where AI will be involved in nearly all future production." So a lot of people have called out Tim Sweeney. He's made a lot of statements in the past that people don't agree with. And I heard about this on Giant Bob initially, and I never heard this quote. I had to dig for the quote in a VGC article. But it just seems kind of like people are neglecting this quote because I actually agree with him. I do. I think that in terms of an art exhibit, I would like to know if a piece of art, a picture was made using AI. And a lot of that, and he's obviously looking through it from a business perspective, like, well, you need to understand the rights because obviously if something that looks like a Van Gogh piece is produced using an AI model, it's because that AI piece or that AI model was fed a bunch of Van Gogh and that it kind of mimicked Van Gogh into doing that. Obviously, humans do that too whenever they're inspired by something, but it's really splitting hairs. In this case, it really is like a legit copy and paste because it would be pretty spot on because it's a computer doing it, not necessarily a human, which is much more prone to error, which is where the imperfections come from, which is what makes it art, so on and so forth. I'm not an art student, but I kind of understand that at the very least. But yes, he's looking through it from a much more business perspective when he says that. I would like to know that. But like what he's saying essentially is games are going to be using this in the future, which is understandable, in all future production. So, like, essentially, you can have a painting that is hand painted moving forward. He essentially assumes there will be very little game development moving forward that will not incorporate AI. And I think that may be true. I think that may be true for even real art. I think in 100 years, I genuinely think that you can go to an art exhibit and it'll be like, yeah, this is an AI piece, and it will be kind of expected that AI art is there, and maybe it would be like almost the same thing as going into an art exhibit and somebody saying, well, yeah, this was made on a computer, it's digital art, or this was made, like, I don't know, using pastels, or this was a colored pencil one, or this was a whatever X, Y, and Z different technique was used to produce this art. I think you can kind of I think we're probably going to get to that point with AI. And somebody will eventually be like, well, yeah, this is, somebody produced this with Chat GPT. And it's like, well, it's still a very good piece of art, but now I kind of understand the process that went into making it, and maybe that makes me appreciate it more or less. Like that kind of, I think that would be where we're at in like 100 years with AI art. Easy. So I would think it would be like disclosing how you made it. The art style used would be kind of the same thing with AI art. Okay? So I actually kind of agree with that to an extent. I think it's a little bit different there, but I kind of get it. And I think, yeah, for major AAA games, kind of segmenting into that, I think 100% those are all going to be made with AI because they're too big. They're one, too big, and two, made by massive corporations who want to make a profit. So AI will be the cheapest way to do that. And I slightly disagree that there will still probably be real humans that code things for video games. And it will be the same thing like some painter who's still in 100 years will still be painting with an easel and paint, but like there will also be somebody who's using ChatGPT to generate an image, and it's like, well, the I think the selling point will be, well, this is human made. Like this was coded by a human. It has real thought and soul put into every piece of it, and maybe that won't be as distinguishable as maybe real art. Maybe not. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But like that will be its selling point. I think really it will probably be somewhat indistinguishable. But I think a lot of people moving forward will probably understand coding. Like we will probably start teaching coding as an AI way. Like we will probably start teaching people how to code using AI in the next probably 10, 20 years. I wouldn't be surprised. If we're honestly doing it in 20 years, I think we're really behind in doing that because we're already seeing people starting to code significantly using AI tools. So we'll definitely be doing that in like probably 5 years. I would say you're going to see at a collegiate level people being taught to code using AI. Like I was taught how to code in school using obviously like traditional means, but like I think you're going to see AI basically negate that. You're going to see people really step in and try to make that the kind of norm for people to understand how to do it. And that's normal, right? Like coding has, even manual coding has been updated over years and decades to be more user friendly and for the computer to do a lot of very low basic coding functions for you. And there are people who specialize in engineering that low level code, but like most people who are coding only know how to code from a high level perspective, and that's just kind of expected. And I think that's probably what's going to happen with AI coding. Anyway, the point is I kind of agree with him here, right? I kind of agree. Like, but then he went on, and I don't agree with this. So a user commented on this post, which was apparently on X, and he said, "The customers deserve to know," which I completely agree with. I do not see a reason why you should hide that information. Like that's kind of where I disagree with him. Okay? I understand what he's saying. Look, it's just going to be super, universal, okay? But I don't know why you can't disclose it too. Like that's silly. I understand his perspective, but I do disagree that like the customer should just be able to know that information if they really want to. Like that's just is fine. Like there's no real harm in telling the consumer that that is the way it is. So I completely agree with this. The customers deserve to know. He then goes on with, why stop at AI use then? We could have mandatory disclosures for what shampoo brand the developer uses. Customers deserve to know. LOL. Obviously, he's being kind of a douchebag here, and like this is something, if I was working for Epic, I'd be like, oh my gosh, my boss sucks. Like why is my boss on Twitter getting in arguments with just random people and like being really petty to them in the comments? But we'll throw that aside. We'll assume that all he said was very cordial and very kind. And essentially, I just completely disagree with this. Obviously, he's saying essentially, why does a customer need to know something incredibly minor about the product? Like that's silly. Where would you draw the line is what he's saying. He's saying I do not agree with his example. I think obviously the shampoo brand being used in the product or in the developer's hair is too far removed from the product. Obviously, I would clearly draw the line way before that, but I understand what he's saying. So like at what point will you draw that line? Like, okay, well, I need to know if AI is used in the game. Okay. Well, do you need to know what, development studio was used? Do you need to know what engine it's on? Do you need to know X, Y, and Z? I'm sure that some people care about that and they may make purchasing decisions based on that. The vast majority of people will not care. Do I need to know what the developer had for lunch today? Obviously freaking not. But maybe they ate a baby. Maybe they ate somebody's baby, and I don't want to support them for eating someone's baby, so I need to know what each developer is eating every day for lunch. Like, you can make that argument. And that's kind of what Tim Sweeney is essentially saying. Okay, we're giving him the benefit of the doubt here. He's obviously chosen a very extreme example, just like I did with my baby eating example. But come on, come on. Like, obviously, the line gets drawn before that. And I think it is up to society to deem what is good and what is bad. Like what do I care about? And currently, society cares about AI. I don't think they care about it in the right ways, and I don't think they understand why they don't like it. But I do think society cares about AI, and they choose that's important for them to know. I think that should be probably disclosed if the company feels comfortable disclosing it. I don't know. That's where now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know. What if I wanted to know somebody's religion, who made the game, or political affiliation? Do I deserve to know that? I don't. I don't think so. I don't think I deserve to know that. That's obviously private, personal information. So, like, I don't think I deserve to know that. Which is obviously like what Tim Sweeney is kind of getting at, the shampoo brand and all that. The customers, I don't know, actually. Now I'm kind of overthinking it to a point where I kind of agree with Tim Sweeney. And I do think the customers deserve to know if that's something that's a genuine sticking point. But, like, at the same time, yeah, where do you draw the line? I don't know, actually. I actually don't know where you draw the line. And I don't know how you determine what the line should be drawn, because I even think the AI thing is kind of a little silly to be caring about that much. It maybe how it's used, maybe, but I think again at some point we're going to transition to a society where AI is a large part of everything we consume. And if that's the case, then it doesn't matter anymore. Like, you're already that deep into it. You just either are going to live in the mountains or like completely disconnect from society, or you're going to consume AI content. And that is what it is. So I normally come into these conversations with a definitive answer to this. Tim Sweeney's an a-hole. Let's just get that out of the way. You don't need, like, this is some Randy Pitchford bullcrap. You do not need to be arguing with random people on Twitter when you're the CEO of like a multi-billion-dollar corporation and like arguably one of the biggest games of all time. That's obviously you're just a douche nozzle, to put it lightly. But I think his argument, even though it is not very well executed, is accurate and holds water. And again, I didn't hear anybody talking about the argument. I just heard him say, "Oh, like you should take away these things, take away the mark on AI games because it's just stupid." And I think if information is available to the player that they want, I think it should be out there. But at the same time, again, where do you draw the line? I don't know. I'm going in circles because I don't even know. I'm not smart enough to know this stuff. Okay, I know you came here for an expert opinion on all things video games, but here, I don't know. This is one of those things that's just going to rock society, and we're going to have to figure it out piece by piece. And it's not looking good. But overall, welcome to the future, ladies and gentlemen. Isn't it fun? Isn't AI fun? When I watched iRobot starring Will Smith, I never thought I'd see the day, but here I am. We're just a little while away. Just give China a little bit. We'll have a walking army. Guaranteed. Oh man. Oh well. And I think that's gonna wrap it for the news. An interesting segment for sure. More so a philosophical debate around AI that I freaking lost to myself in. But hey, we're all human, right? Until we're not, and we integrate with the AI hive mind. So on to impressions. I feel like impressions have been a little light recently. I've been very busy, a lot of stuff going on in life, so I haven't had a lot of time to put into games, which is so sad because I'm itching. I'm looking at a backlog right now, and I am itching. I'm like, oh my gosh, I really want to play Death Stranding 2, but I know I don't have 40 hours to put into it. Or, oh my gosh, I really want to play X, Y, or Z. Like, I have just an itch to play that right now, but gosh darn, I do not have the time to do that. So I'm really just going to start biting the bullet. But I tried to play two smaller games in the process of trying to clear out some things on the backlog. Still going through some stuff that I had kind of picked up while trucking through Ghost of Yote. One of those is Mortal Kombat 1, and one of those is Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip, which is a smaller indie title. I'll start off by talking about Mortal Kombat 1, which is the newest Mortal Kombat game from NetherRealms, which was, as we just discussed on this episode, just sold to Netflix. So I felt the need to kind of go through this. I've never actually played one of the more recent Mortal Kombat games. I have played Injustice 1 and 2, which are made by the same developer. But obviously Mortal Kombat is it's a legend, I would say. It's probably a very apt term. It is a legendary gaming IP. It's one of the most well-known IP in video games. They are currently making more Mortal Kombat, like movies and TV shows and all sorts of stuff. And I've never played one of the single-player campaigns, which NetherRealms is really known for. It's single-player campaigns, and that's what I've always felt is what's really kind of put me off of fighting games. I've never been a big fighting game guy, and I've always wanted to be. Because there's such a massive community behind those. It really does seem like everybody really likes them, but the gameplay has never been enough to get me into it because fighting games require you to master a game. And mastering a game takes a lot of time and patience, and I don't have either one of those two things. So it makes fighting games pretty much impossible for me to break into. I don't ever really even attempt. But giving me a single player story focused experience makes it a lot more palatable, I would say, because otherwise you're literally just engaging in fighting mechanics that are pretty obtuse and hard to learn for a new player of the genre. So I typically stay away. But these, single player campaigns are very cinematic. They have a lot of story, and the characters. I mean, Injustice is kind of known for being a strong story, to a point where DC actually spun it off into a comic that they still make. I think not as into the comic scene, but I'm pretty sure it was a very well-received run of Injustice. But NetherRealms also makes Mortal Kombat, and Mortal Kombat also has a world and lore and characters that have backstories and motivations and all sorts of stuff. And I don't know anything about it. Like, that's something that I've always felt really divorced from the fighting community. Like, I know that Street Fighter, like, I know Ryu has a story. And, like, there's a reason that he's, like, on the box of every game and is kind of the mascot of that, and he's in Super Smash Brothers and all that other bullcrap. Like, I know there's clearly something cool about this guy other than he's just a fighter in this fighting game. Like, I kind of assume that. But I've never seen anything in a Street Fighter game that's made me go like, oh, I really need to, this is a really good introductory point for me to really learn the lore of Street Fighter. Like, I've never felt that way. And Mortal Kombat 1 is weirdly kind of trying to do that. It's kind of a prequel, or its story is kind of a reboot, not prequel, but reboot to the game's universe. But it also makes it really difficult for me to even say that because apparently the lore in Mortal Kombat is way weirder than I really thought it was. I thought that Mortal Kombat was just like people fighting each other and like doing it in a really brutally violent and bloody way, and that it was just like probably like a tournament or something. And that actually is a significant point of the story within Mortal Kombat. But that is not all that is going on. Certainly not in Mortal Kombat 1, because like the game opens and it's like, oh yeah, Liu Kang is the god of time. Like, he won a tournament in a previous game that made him the god of time. And when he did that, he reset the timeline to try and make everybody nice. So, like, apparently there's established villains and heroes within Mortal Kombat, which I didn't know. I just thought everyone was evil or everyone was, like, really mean or something because it's so brutally violent all the time. I just assumed that. They're all ripping each other's spines out and spitting on them or something. Like, I just assume none of them are really gently or kind people. That's kind of my impression. But like in this game, apparently the timeline has been reset. Everybody's a good boy, and then the timeline essentially gets corrupted, and some of the villains start becoming villains again, and you have to stop them. And it eventually kind of devolves into like all of the timelines intersect, and I'm like, what the frick? What is going on? Like, this is a way more complicated storyline than I would have expected for Mortal Kombat. And I guess you kind of have to have like a grand epic narrative to make it really super interesting, but like at the same time, that just seems so overly complicated for Mortal Kombat that I would not have assumed that's what the series was the story for. Like, I just didn't understand that. So I really kind of forced myself through the story. It took me maybe 5-6 hours, something like that. I played on very easy. I do not take shame in that at all because I realized that I am really bad at fighting games. Like, really, really, really bad. Even on very easy, I had to figure out how to play the game in order to be even marginally successful. I never lost a fight on very easy, but like there were some fights that I was like, oh my gosh, like that was a close one, like, and that's probably really bad when like half the time the computer player is just like standing there waiting for you to hit them. So you can kind of tell how bad I am at fighting games by that indicator. But I basically found down triangle as the most optimal combo that everyone has because that is a problem with me in fighting games. And Mortal Kombat, the story mode, is really trying to help you out with that. So like one of the biggest problems with a fighting game is you have to not only learn the combat, but every character has different combos. So, and combos are typically fairly intricate, like at least 3 button presses for you to remember and many different combos for you to, like, okay, well, this is the long range combo. This is the grab and throw combo. This is X, Y, and Z combo. And it's a lot for you to remember. But then every character has a different set of combos and a different set of moves that execute when you do that. And I was just like, it's very often I'm like, I have no interest in going through every single character and trying to learn them to see if they're my playing style and I like their moves and blah, 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 blah. In this game, you have basically 3 or 4 fights with every single fighter on the roster, or at least most fighters on the roster, to kind of give you a chance to not only introduce you to each character, but also give you a chance to kind of get familiar with them. But even when I was attempting to do that at the beginning of the game, I would even like hit points where I was like, okay, I'm kind of getting used to this character. I feel like I'm getting better with them. And as soon as I felt that, they immediately ripped the character away from me and gave me another player another character to play as. And while I understand that design philosophy, like I'm really just supposed to be getting a taste, as a new player, I also wanted to learn the game, and it just kind of felt like there's no good way for you to do that. Like if you ever want to get into a fighting game, you really just have to commit to it. And that's kind of the beginning and end of the story. Like if you never actually want to commit to it, you will never be good at it. You will never have fun. And that's just the reality of a fighting game. And I just think that there has to be like I feel like I don't feel that way with like a Smash Brothers. Like I can play I know that there is a high level play of Smash Brothers that is very intricate and very like complicated and, high skill level. But I also know that there's an ability for a way for me to pick up these game or a game of Smash Brothers with friends who have never played it before, and we can all have a good time. And I just don't see that as a possibility with Mortal Kombat or with really any other fighting game because they're all so complicated. I think Mortal Kombat is probably one of the more less complicated of fighting games, but it's still pretty freaking complicated. So like for like somebody who's never played one before, so unfortunate. So that's kind of where I eventually got to the point where I was like, okay, what? And fortunately, the move set, which is that's something I had to do every single time I got to a new character, is I had to immediately pause the game and go to the move set and try to figure out what moves I wanted to use with the character and which ones would be even easy for me to execute properly. And then even then, I wasn't good enough to like execute them quickly enough for the computer to be able to like counter it. So it was always very difficult. But if you press down triangle, it's very easy to remember. Down triangle, you can maximize damage. You can do 140 damage each swing. And like even some complicated combos they do like 160 damage or something like that. So it's not that much difference. So I was just like, yeah, sure. Evan, just do that combo over and over and over again. So I just spammed it against the computer pretty much till the end of the game, and that was it. I can't say I was completely enthralled with the Mortal Kombat universe. It still seemed really weird. I'm not gonna say weird. Weird isn't right, but like it just felt like I was supposed to know who everybody in Mortal Kombat was, and if I didn't, then like that's a problem. Like it really is still meant for people who really like Mortal Kombat, even though it's a reboot of the story. It just kind of seemed like it kept going. It didn't really have a great narrative. It just kind of felt like it was a narrative. Very funny. Like even in Injustice, this happens, but like especially early on in the game to like try and pace the story and gameplay, there will just be times when somebody will be like, "Hey, I don't like you," and and then like they may even be friends. Like straight up, they'll be like, "Oh well, we're best friends. Don't you remember?" And they'll be like, "No, you look funny. I don't think you're my friend." And then you'll fight them, and then at the end of the fight, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's my bad. I wasn't wearing my glasses, dude. I thought you were somebody else," or like something like that. It's like really contrived, but at the same time, I do need to like play the game still. I don't want to just watch a Mortal Kombat movie. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that it's so obvious to me, and like Street Fighter's like this way, Tekken is like this, all of them, is these games were made decades ago, and nobody thought that these games were going to become these massive IP that stretched on for decades, and that the gaming community would typically want more personality from these fighters. Like it's very obvious that Mortal Kombat, when they made this game, they were just like, yeah, a ninja that has like ice powers. Yeah, that's pretty cool. We'll make him a fighter. And that was the entire conceit behind some of these characters is just that's cool. Like just make him a fighter for sure. And maybe a gameplay tweak they wanted to, like, oh, well, we need a long range fighter. Okay, well, we'll make this character. They weren't actually looking at it and being like, well, yeah, these guys make sense within this universe. And so like when you when you try to make a story with like all of these different characters that have so little in common, it's like what the frick even is this universe? Like it doesn't work well at all. It was also a very Warner Brothers game. I felt like I should also mention that, especially since the earlier topic of Netflix buying them. But like, it was bogged down with so many different ways for them to make money. It was really pushing like, there's an expansion for the story if you want more of the story. So why not buy the expansion? I was like, nope, have no interest in that at all. There was like a bunch of microtransactions. There was a bunch of like loot box-esque elements to it. It was drowning in ways for you to make alternate purchases through the game. And oh man, that is just, it's insane. I would not find that to be something to benefit the game at all. The other modes are basically just arcade modes. It's what you're used to from most other fighters. There's a lot of content here if you really wanted to go through it, but like, I don't think it's worth it unless, again, you're just mastering the game. Unless you are really devoting yourself to mastering Mortal Kombat, I can't see anybody wanting to do that stuff. And like I said, I don't find the games fun unless you're good at them, and I think it takes time to get good. So it's just it really made me realize I really just don't like fighting games, and I don't think I ever will unless I'm like retired and probably immortal, and I just have a million years to just play video games and Mortal Kombat. I just sit down one day, I'm like, I'm gonna master Mortal Kombat. Today is the day. Like I just can't see myself ever doing that, which is unfortunate because I know the fighting game community has so much fun with those parts of the game, like with those games. It's just sad that I can't get into it because I know that there's a lot of people who love it. And like if you ever go to like a any kind of video game scene, there will always 110%. Like whenever I go to a convention or something like that, it's always fighting games. And I understand it, but I can't get into it, and it sucks. I'm like, dang, I'm just the wrong gamer. I was just born the wrong gamer. Oh, what an unfortunate circumstance. I also have access to the Marvel Tokon Fighting game beta, which opens up this weekend, and I'm like, dude, I want to play it, but like I already know I'm not going to enjoy it. Like I just came off of freaking Mortal Kombat 1, and I'm like, I freaking didn't enjoy that game because I suck at fighting games, and it's like, well, guess what Marvel Tokon is? It's a freaking fighting game. Not only that, but it's from a much more in-depth developer of fighting games than NetherRealms. NetherRealms made a great game for like casual fighting fans, but like Arc System Works is a hardcore fighting game developer, so like it's gonna be way. I've played tangentially played a few Arc System Work games, and like it's even worse. Like it's even worse. So like I'm gonna play the beta, but gosh darn, is it gonna be? It's gonna be a problem. I think. I don't think I'm gonna love it, but I'll try it out. Why not? It was free. I get to touch the game without paying for it, so that's pretty nice. So I think that wraps up my thoughts on Mortal Kombat 1. I believe that was decent. Hopefully there's not some fighting game fan out there that's just like, oh my gosh, this guy sucks. Like, yeah, I know. I already know that. Okay, no need to rub it in. Next up, Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip. Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip is different, I'd say. Caught my eye. I am the 3D platforming king, as I like to say on many an episode. And I thought Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip, based on the trailers that I saw in the gameplay, was a 3D platforming collectathon. And it's interesting because I don't know what it is. And we'll get into that. So, Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip is a small open world collectathon where you play as Terry, who's a young boy who wants to avoid summer school by getting enough turbo power for his car to drive into space. This is a very cartoony game. It's a very small open world, a very teensy tiny map, and you're essentially told here's a car at the beginning of the game. You have a car. You're now like a taxi driver, which you never actually taxi people in the game. Or you might like one time, but like it's like a side quest or something. It's like not something. It's not like a crazy taxi thing. But you're given a taxi at the beginning of the game, and essentially are told you need to collect scrap so you can upgrade your car to do a longer turbo boost. And once you do a long enough turbo boost, there is a giant road in the middle of the city that just goes straight up into outer space. And you must turbo boost into space so you do not have to go to summer school. Tiny Terry is a child, canonically. Like he is literally a child. And I didn't know that when I first started the game. I thought he was just like a dumb regular person. But he's like canonically like 8 or something like that, and like your uncle is like babysitting you over the course of the game. It is a genuinely charming and fun premise. It is funny. I actually do think some of the writing in this game is legitimately funny and like made me chuckle, and like I'm pretty happy with that. Like I like to think I'm pretty hard to make that happen. Humor is so subjective, but like I genuinely think this game is charming and funny for what it is. Here's the problem. I don't know who the heck this game is for. It is hard for me to quantify exactly what this game even is, what its objective is gameplay wise. So like when I look at this game, I see 2 potential paths that it could really fall into. Number 1, it's a platformer. So, is it a platformer? Kind of. You jump around, or you can jump around the environment, but it's not particularly fun. Like, moving around as Tiny Terry is not like the most interesting. It's literally like, I think you might have a double jump. I think it's just a single jump. And you're not like jumping around intricately designed platforming areas. It's really the vast majority of the vast majority of space that you're kind of running around is made for Tiny Terry's car. Like, you're really not hopping around a lot of platforming areas because that's not what the game is really about. It's really more so about driving the car. So it's not particularly fun to move around. It's just Tiny Terry. And there's really not an incentive to. Like, your incentive is to collect enough scrap to build your car out. Well, there's like a lot of scrap in the world, and really the fastest way to get scrap is to do the side missions in the game, which essentially become main missions because when you do them, you get a large amount of scrap. So like the fastest way to beat the game is there is like little pieces of scrap like strewn about the environment, just the entire map is kind of covered in them, but like it's really like they're all over the place and it's not very fun to collect them, and you need like 100 of them or something to get a new power up. So they're so seldomly found. You're like going to find one on top of a building, you're going to find one on top of another building. It's not worth actually trying to collect them. And then once you collect enough, there's no reason for you to collect them anymore. Like, there's still plenty of scrap left in my game. I think from a completionist standpoint, I completed like 10% of the game or something like that. It's like a crazy amount of stuff is still left for me to collect. But like, there is no reason for me to do it because all it's going to do is increase my turbo meter, and I don't need to increase my turbo meter because the map is already super small. It's a really small map, and I've already met the prerequisite to beat the game. So like I don't necessarily think the side quests are even very fun to do either. At least most of them aren't. So like, it's mainly just like drive here, get this, do that. Some mini games here or there for you to interact with, but that's pretty much it. So like I wouldn't say it's very much of a platformer, a very fun collectathon, because you're just kind of given the vast majority of the collectibles that you need for doing side missions, not platforming challenges. So that would leave the second option, which is it an open world checklist game? Like, is it an Ubisoft game? And that's also like a kind of, and I've kind of already touched on this already, but there's really not that much to collect in means of a checklist. Like, it's really just a handful of side missions, which again, once you do all of them, you've pretty much automatically beaten the game. And those side missions aren't particularly super interesting or like checklisty. You're just kind of doing random things like going from point A to point B or collecting a thing here or there and bringing it to somebody or doing a mini game. So I wouldn't necessarily say it is designed in a way that like a Ubisoft game would be and scratches that itch of a collectathon or of a checklist. So like I really wouldn't say that either, but again, the entire design of the game is kind of moving around this open world. And again, the open world is very small, and it doesn't necessarily have to be huge, but like the game isn't super dense either. So like I just didn't feel a real reason to explore. And when I did, it wasn't ever really rewarded. It was just like, yeah, you're in the middle of a desert. There's nothing here. And it's like, okay, well, I guess that's cool. The game can easily be beaten in 3 to 4 hours. I think I beat it in like 3.5. It would probably be like twice that or even more to 100% it. There's like a thing you can buy at one of the shops to basically helps lead you in the direction of every single scrap. I cannot see myself ever wanting to do that. It just sounds miserable. Like I said, the game isn't designed to have fun platforming. Your move set is not very fun to interact with, and like the collectibles, there's no reason to collect them, and it's not fun. Like, it's just not fun. So like I don't know why you would. Like, I don't know why you would ever 100% this game. There's not enough content to fully incentivize you to drive the world fully and dive into it. As I mentioned, I really do like the overall art style for the game and the personality and charm. I really did think the conclusion for the game, with like the final bit, the end of the story, was genuinely funny, and the credit sequence was actually genuinely funny and charming as well. The problem is I just don't know who wants this game. Like, who, after hearing what I have to say, who is actively like, that game is for me? I do not know who I would recommend Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip for. Like, I am at a loss. I wanted to love this game. I thought this game looked really cool. I thought it was a platformer, and I really wouldn't classify it as that. It is, within the barest of terms, a platformer, but it is not attempting to be a platformer. It is just partly a platformer. I wouldn't necessarily say it has much in common with like a Banjo-Kazooie or a Mario or something like that. So I can't say I hate this game. Like, I don't think it does anything egregious, outside of maybe if you wanted to 100% the game. I think you'd probably freaking hate it then. But like, for the most part, I didn't try to do that, so I didn't hate the game. But like, I just didn't find much of incentive to keep going through it. And I paid $8 for this game. It was on sale, and I don't even know if I got my money's worth out of it there, because I wanted a collectathon. I wanted a platformer, and I didn't get it. If I played this game for free, I'd probably be like, yeah, for free, you can get a laugh out of it. Like, it'll be something to kill an afternoon, and like, you'll probably be okay with that. For a paid for title that's $8, I don't know. I think to me that's a little bit of a stretch, considering like it just doesn't have really the focus of any one particular thing and makes anything that you do really good. Like, I don't know. I genuinely would love to recommend Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip. There is charm here. There is love that was clearly put into this by the developer. I can feel it, but I genuinely don't know who I'd recommend it to. Like, that's kind of where the problem truly lies with this. So that is Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip. I know, not the most fun conversation about the game, but it's what I played, brother, and I think it is something that I think well, I don't even know. I can't, like I said, I can't really recommend it. I would love to, but I really can't. It just is what it is. It was just sad, because I really want to love Tiny Terry Turbo Trip, because I have a soft spot for anything attempting to be a 3D platformer, and it does have a lot of charm, and I love the art style. I mean, it's sad. The game presents well. The game presents well. There's just not a core to it. It's all surface level, which is sad. But that's gonna wrap it. That's gonna be a wrap for today's podcast, ladies and gentlemen. That was a different one, I think. Different than what I expected, for sure. Hopefully, turned out okay. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you're having a good month of December, a good holiday season. And you know what? I appreciate you being here, friend. Can I call you friend? Do I not say that every podcast? I don't know. It just seems presumptive. I don't know. Maybe you're not my friend. Maybe you don't want to be my friend, So I don't want to make any broad strokes, Don't want to be too presumptuous. But I'm glad you're here. Glad you made it to the end. It really does mean a lot to me. I love talking about video games, if you didn't know, if you couldn't tell. And I hope to see you next time, friend. I hope you have a good holiday season. If I don't see you next 2 weeks, I think we should be on track for a good episode next 2 weeks. Game Awards coming up. Tokon fighting beta. Yeah, it's good stuff. Just gotta have the time to invest in it, right? But I'll leave it to you, sir, or madam. Even though 98.3% of my audience is apparently male, maybe that 1.7% got to the end. And if so, I appreciate you. Have a good one, and bye-bye.